Welcome, new 100 Yards Football. Today, we're going to have the University of Oklahoma team preview as we're doing our college football team previews throughout the season. If you like the video today, please come in and share it. I'm your host, Vincent Turner. Special thanks to my producer today, Mr. Logan Landers, for making it happen. Today, I got a gentleman. He has a podcast, Hall of Fame of College Football. It's one of the hottest podcasters in the Midwest, in the Southwest. This gentleman is wrote for the Fort Worth Times. So he's a guy that knows all about college football. Very talented. Coming to us live out of Hobbs, New Mexico. My man, Mr. Jason Watkins. So if you like the video today, please come in and share it. Mr. Watkins, tell us about this premier program in college football, the Oklahoma Sooners. What happened with them last season under Brent Venables? They went 6-7 in a program that's got a lot of history.
First of all, I just wanted to say thank you, Vincent, for having me on the show. A big fan of your show for a long time. I appreciate you having me on to talk about it. This Oklahoma program stumbled a bit this past season, going 6-7, as you said. It was, I think, a lot of the narrative that's been out there. You know, it's been repeated over and over throughout the national media, was that there was a lot of talent there. The truth is there was a lot of talent that was stripped from the program when Lincoln Riley left after that loss in the Bedlam game, the last game of the season there in 2021. What's happened since then, though, with Brent Venables coming in, we're talking about a coach that has been a part of 3 national championship programs. The first one at Oklahoma, of course, in 2000, also had them in 2016 and 2020, I believe, they're at Clemson. And putting together amazing defenses, guys that are going to the first round of the NFL draft year after year. He comes back to basically rebuild the reputation of OU on the defensive side of the ball. We all know of Oklahoma for the past really 10, 12 years, and even beyond that, as an offensive program. You've had Heisman Trophy winners Sam Bradford, Baker Mayfield, along with Kyler Murray, and then you had a Heisman finalist oh my gosh, our boy from the Eagles.
Jalen Hurts.
Jalen Hurts. Come on, man. I just lost my train of thought there for a second. I'm sorry about that. But we know them as an offensive juggernaut. When you think about the Baker Mayfield era he was a Heisman finalist, top 5 in the Heisman 3 different times before he won, and then won it, of course. This is a program and then the next year, Kyler Murray comes in, does the same thing. Sam Bradford, of course, early on, they played for the national title against Florida. He won the Heisman that season as well. Offensively, they've done a lot of things. But when you start thinking about the defenses before Brent Venables left to Clemson, you had guys like Gerald McCoy and Tommy Harris and, guys like, it was just, there was a ton of them over and over. Roy Williams, the Superman Roy Williams, they had guys like that, Teddy Lehman. They were doing things on defense. This is what really kind of pushed them over the edge. Is yes, they could go out there and light up a scoreboard, but they could also shut you down when they needed to, right? That hasn't really been the case since Coach Venables left, and particularly under Lincoln Riley. It continued to kind of go down defensively in the size and also their ability to kind of, make plays or even really stop anybody at all. The biggest thing was lack of interior talent, I would say. With you being there in Atlanta, and I know you guys pay a lot of attention and cover Georgia quite a bit. What's the biggest thing with that program? It's along that, in the trenches, and I think you could say the same thing for every big time school in the SEC, right? If you don't have it going on in the trenches, you don't have it going on. His first 2 months at the school, Coach Venables and his staff salvaged the top 10 unit. They were able to, in their second recruiting class, picked up the number 1 defensive edge rusher in the country, number 4 overall player in PJ Adebawari out of Kansas City, Missouri, as well. This season, they are in the running for, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 blue chip defensive line players right now. They've already picked up Jaden Jackson from IMG Academy. They're down in Florida. And now they did miss out on Williams Winery here the other day. He went to the hometown school in Missouri. Big pickup for them, but they're still in line for David Stone Jr. He's from Del City in the area around Oklahoma City. He's also an IMG Academy guy. Jaden Jackson is his line mate there down at IMG. You also have guys like Nigel Smith. There's Danny Okoye, who's another Oklahoma product who is getting a lot of love right now from a lot of schools. Even guys like David McKinley from down around LSU. When you're a Louisiana kid, you're not really supposed to get out of the state when you're that guy, right? Another 5-star player. McKinley looks like he very well may end up at Oklahoma or Texas, because apparently from what we're hearing, the Brian Kelly regime, somebody upset his mother. And when you know as well as I do, if mama's not happy, ain't nobody happy. So apparently there's a really good opportunity for Oklahoma and Texas in that one. Obviously there's a battle for him, but and I would say that chances are he could probably end up still staying at LSU, but they got to pull out all the stops to get him. That's for sure. In any event, the last cycle, they also picked up one of the top safeties in the country in Peyton Bowen. They flipped him from Notre Dame and then eventually Oregon too. He had initially on signing day chosen Oregon. He didn't end up sending in his paperwork, or it didn't get there somehow. By the next morning, he had chosen OU. He is there and possibly may end up being a big time. He may end up being a big contributor in his first season if he looks anything like what he did during the spring, which all indications are that he has. One of the biggest pickups, though, I think has been through the transfer portal. They went in and got freshman All-American Dasan McCullough, defensive end, edge rush guy, who's also playing a little bit of outside linebacker, that cheetah position that if you know anything about the Venables defenses, the cheetah position has kind of been that position that is his calling card. If you look back on his career there at Clemson, obviously 2012, his first year, their total defensive rank was right around number 60 in the country. After that, they went to 25, then number 1, then 10, 8, 4, 5, 6. They dropped to 15 in 2020, and then they were back in the top 10 again in 2021. Their scoring defense was number 1 or in the top 3 5 different times during his tenure there. Their third down defensive ranks, was in the top 10. Let's see, 6 definitely in the top 10. All but 2 years that they were there, third down defensive rank. This is something that they know how to do there. Now, obviously, in year 1, that wasn't the case. When Lincoln Riley left, 13 guys from the depth chart on a defense that really wasn't very good anyway was gone, along with those 2 5-star quarterbacks that we all know about, and Caleb Williams, the eventual Heisman Trophy winner from a year ago, and Spencer Rattler, who is now quarterback at South Carolina. But that defense was, in total defense, they were ranked somewhere near 122nd in the country out of 131 teams. That's not what you would expect out of a Brent Venables team. But if you know anything about the system that he runs, it's pretty exotic, and it's, it is dependent on them being in the right spots and knowing where to go, depending on hitting the right gaps, having a lot of discipline in their assignments. There were a lot of games. If you look at last season, that 6-7 record, 5 of those losses ended up being by 7 points or less. And in fact, 4 of them were by 3 points. There were a lot of little things that could have changed things. The offense was still very good. Dylan Gabriel came in, transfer from UCF, came in and did a pretty good job, leading them to a top 15 overall ranking in the country on offense with Jeff Lebby as the offensive coordinator. They are going to do a great job running the football. They're going to continue to do that even after Eric Gray went to the draft this past season. You've got Gavin Sawchuk, a sophomore, and then also, let's see, with the running backs here on my depth chart here, you've got Javante Barnes and Gavin Sawchuk are expected to be the top 2 running backs, but this is one of the deepest running back rooms in the country as well. You've got Tawi Walker, who's a junior, who's looked really good in the spring and early part of the fall as well. Marcus Majors is a guy that has struggled to kind of stay healthy throughout most of his career at Oklahoma, but he's a guy that when he is available, and he's drawn comparisons to guys, and this is a big comparison, but he's drawn comparisons athletically to Adrian Peterson. If he can stay healthy, that's a big time. That's a big time running back room. That's not even including the guys that they had come in this recruiting class. You had, Daylon Smothers from North Carolina. They call him Hollywood. He's been one of the top. He was one of the top running backs in the country this past cycle. You also had Hicks out of Denton Ryan. These guys stand to really probably get some playing time as well. This is a deep unit. And then right now they have a commitment from the number 1 running back in the country, Taylor Tatum, who they beat out Lincoln Riley and USC to get. Things are going really well. You will have a second season under the leadership of Dylan Gabriel, but they have one of the top. Well, he was the Gatorade National Player of the Year in their freshman Jackson Arnold at quarterback as well. So if there was another injury, as you saw this past season, Dylan Gabriel missed 2 games with the concussion, or the better part of 2 games. He got a concussion in the TCU game, missed the Red River game, which they obviously got blown away in. Their depth at quarterback was really hurt. Dylan Gabriel's looked really good throughout the spring and the summer, and he's coming in looking in. He's been around Coach Lebby for quite a while, so they're expecting big things out of them. I would suspect that you're probably going to see Jackson Arnold in some games as well, though, so they can get ready for their first year in the SEC in 2024.
Talk about that defensive side of the ball. This is an Oklahoma defense that we don't see in the past. Last year, the Sooners gave up 30 points a game.
Yeah.
They gave up 187 yards rushing. They gave up 273 in the air, 461 total yards. That doesn't come from an Oklahoma defensive football team, not under Brent Venables, who had success at Clemson.
Right.
But this is what I look at, the key stat from Oklahoma defense last year. And as you mentioned a few seconds ago, you said Oklahoma had talent. Last year, their defense had 104 tackles for loss. So how does that ends up they give up 30 points a game? But they had 104 tackles for losses.
Yeah, I would just say, as I kind of told you, they actually had the leading tackler in the conference, and it's the weirdest thing, but they did. They had the leading tackler in the conference in Danny Stutzman, right? But they also missed a lot of assignments. If you can go back and see different times of different games that you saw it. Third down was a real problem for them this past season. I mean, when you look back at the K-State loss, another one of those 3-point losses. They had 3rd and 26, I believe, in that game. They were going to get off the field. They had just come back to get within 7 points. Had marched right down the field. They give up the first down on a quarterback sneak run. He got flushed out of the pocket. He gets out of there. So they missed a lot of tackles in key situations. It was just, and again, it was a lot of things that you saw, and this is something that you don't see a ton of from Brent Venables' defenses, but it was kind of indicative of what you were seeing from the past regime of just, what they called speed D, or what they continue to call speed D within that Alex Grinch defense there that's now at USC with Lincoln Riley. It's just go to the ball. They They rely on speed, not a bunch of size, but also you don't have to be disciplined in your assignments, because you don't really have a lot of assignments. So it was hard to kind of get some of these guys at times to stay disciplined in where they're supposed to be. As I said, that, losing that K-State game, they end up scoring right after that. Gabriel takes Oklahoma right down the field right away and they score, but it it was too little too late, towards the end of that game. The Baylor game, they have right down near the goal line at the end of the game, they've got the play right. They end up with two guys in the same gap, and you get the Baylor running back scoring the winning touchdown there. Same thing kind of deal. You saw it over and over again. Same thing against West Virginia. They had some penalties that hurt them a lot, both offensively and defensively. Third down, fourth down penalties that gave first downs, things like that. There was little things that happened like that throughout the season. As much as you would want to say that that's all on the defense, I think part of that has to go to the offense as well, though. There were times that they didn't capitalize on big-time throws. You have open receivers, you get dropped footballs, or you get Dylan Gabriel missing them, It's understandable that they're not going to hit every target, but sometimes you have to, it's important. That K-State game, there were a couple of wide open receivers that he just didn't hit on third and fourth down. So that would also help out your defense a little bit if they're not on the field as much, because there was also times that, they wouldn't run out a lot of clock and they would immediately, go 3 and out. It's a quick strike offense. So I know that a lot of times people want to see them slow down a little bit, stuff like that. You don't really do that when you're one of those up-tempo offenses. You have to kind of stick with your tempo. What you have to make sure that you do is not go 3 and out all the time. So as much as you want to kind of put it off on all the defense, which, it's, which comes first, the chicken or the kind of thing, right, Vincent? You got to have both. They kind of have to play complementary football. And I don't think that was something that they did very well. But as I said, you lost 13 guys off of that defensive depth chart, off of the defense that really wasn't that great, the year before. So, and it really just hadn't been since Coach Venables left. So, honestly, and even in his last season, there were some things that were going on that it wasn't doing great then either. They kind of suffered in that last season with Venables there. Once Coach Stoops brought back his brother Mike, who had lost his job as head coach there at Arizona, he brought him back as co-coordinator, and Venables left to Clemson from there. I think that it probably helped him a bit in his career because he was able to open up some recruiting pipelines that it looks like have done very well. As I said, they ended up recruiting in the top 5 in the country, even going 6 and 7, bringing in guys like Adebawari, Peyton Bowen. You bring in Dasan McCullough. His little brother is also, Dave McCullough, is also part of that defense. They got Kendall Dobie from the JUCO ranks, who was the number 1 defensive back in the country in the JUCO. They also got guys like Makari Vickers and Lewis Carter. Both of these guys are Florida kids, high 4-star top 100 players. They both played in All-American games in their senior year in high school, showed out both of them. There's a lot of really good talent that they picked up through recruiting and through the transfer portal. You probably know of Rondell Bothroyd, Wake Forest defensive end. He's part of that portal class. You've got Devon Sears coming in from Texas State, big on that defensive line position. One of the things I would say, and this is something that they brought up, in the past few weeks, is when Coach Venables got there was one guy that was over 300 pounds. They now have 6 guys that are over 300 pounds. Again, it's important to have big boys in the trenches if you're going to play at the level that Oklahoma wants to play at. And that's something that, along with that, the secondary is really good. They got Reggie Pearson from Texas Tech. He was a big hitter. He laid some wood in that game against Oklahoma last year where he almost knocked Dylan Gabriel out of the game again towards the end of that one in overtime. He hit Eric Gray so hard, it didn't seem like he wanted the football anymore after that. The guy could bring it, and he's been on a number 2 defense in the nation when he was at Wisconsin. He's come in and said one of my friends' podcasts that covers OU a lot. He said that this defense now has more talent on it than they had there at Wisconsin when they were number 2 in the country. That's saying something, and this is from a guy that's, kind of been around the block, and he's now a super senior himself. I expect that they're going to be night and day different. And that's really what it's going to take, for them to take that next step, I think.
Overall, the final question of the day, do we see the Oklahoma Sooners going back to being the Oklahoma Sooners of the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s? Do they rebuild in their final year in the Big 12 before they come into the SEC in 2024?
Yeah, that's the goal. And from what I can tell, I mean, if you look from top to bottom here, you've got a redshirt senior and Woody Washington out of Tennessee. This is an amazing defensive back. Their secondary is really good. One of the biggest issues you saw a year ago was just an inability to put pressure on the quarterback, which I don't care how good your secondary is, you're going to struggle there if you can't get consistent pressure. They've really made a consistent effort to make sure that they can do that this season. At all 3 levels, this looks like an improved defense. If they're able to do that, and along with, they've got, I mean, if you've looked at their schedule, it's definitely not the toughest one. 3 of their losses from a year ago, they don't even play. Kansas State has beaten Oklahoma 3 out of the last 4 seasons. They're not on their regular season schedule. Okay. Texas Tech, who beat them in that overtime game to finish off the regular season, they're not on their schedule either. Baylor's beaten them 2 years in a row. They're not on their schedule either. They do have tough games. Obviously, the Red River game, you expect that Texas should be, and they definitely have the most depth in the conference in that program. That's the only game that they're not favored in, though, for the entirety of the season. Vegas has them the over/under at 9.5 for Oklahoma. I think that with this schedule, you should expect that. Their toughest road game will be the BYU game. That's one of only 3 times that they even have to leave the state of Oklahoma. Throughout, they're going to go to Cincinnati, they're going to go to BYU, and then of course they got the Red River game. They're in Dallas, which is kind of Oklahoma South. So it's almost a home game for them as well. So again, yeah, I think that they should be in the conference championship game. Now, whether or not they win it or not, we're going to find out what Texas is all about. They are loaded. They're loaded at quarterback. They continue to be loaded at running back, and they may have the best offensive line in the league. The one thing that they also have, though, that makes you wonder whether they'll get it done or not is Steve Sarkisian, who he has the nickname 7-game Sark for a reason, or 7-win Sark for a reason. He's never won 10 games in a year. He's only won 9 once. If they can, I could definitely see a situation, even if they were to lose the Red River game again to them, where they meet up again in that championship game. Whether that happens or not, we're going to find out. But Oklahoma probably has the cleanest path to that championship game out of the 2 programs. So I could definitely see them ending up playing for it. And then, going into the SEC, we're going to find out. He has to continue. I think that that's also the next step in being able to recruit for this program as well. I felt like last year when they going 6-7 and being that bad on defense might have been the reason that they were able to get some of these young, amazing players to commit and sign with OU, because they kind of figured they were going to come in and get an opportunity to play right away. I think that some of the guys that they're trying to get now, it may hinge on whether or not they are able to kind of put it together, not lose those 1-score games like you saw this past season, and get to 10 or 11 wins, which I think that they should be able to do with the schedule. I believe that they will. We'll definitely find out. But the schedule looks like, if you look at the over-unders for all their opponents, the highest over-under is at like 7.5, and that's TCU. So, I suspect that they should be able to do it, pending, notwithstanding getting a bunch of injuries or something like that. But at least, and they even have depth in the quarterback room that they didn't have a year ago too. So if you can keep from having a ton of injuries, play better defense, and I feel like if they're even in that top 40 or 50 in the country defensively in most of their rankings, total defense, that would probably put them in the championship game for the Big 12. And it'd be headed towards better things in the future as well.
Okay, I'd like to say thank you today, Mr. Jason Watkins, as he broke down the Boomer Sooner, Oklahoma Sooners. If you like the video, please comment and share. We surely appreciate here 100 Yards Football. Special thanks to our producer today who made it happen, Mr. Logan Landers. My final words about the Oklahoma Sooners. I think Brent Venables is a hell of a football coach. I saw what he did at Clemson. So when you think about Oklahoma, you got to think about this a little bit. Dun, 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 dun. Ralph Neely, 1964. Granville Liggins, 1967. Steve Owens, 1969. Greg Pruitt, Lucius Selman, Dewey Selman, Joe Washington, Randy Hughes, Leroy Selman, George Crumley, Reggie Kinlaw, Billy Sims, David Overstreet, San Antonio Finest, Thomas Lott, Tony Casillas, Brian Bosworth, Keith Jackson, Dante Jones, Ricky Dixon, Roy Williams, Darlin Moore, Kevin Murphy, Jimbo Elrod, Boomer Sooner. Y'all have a nice week here on 100 Yards of Football. Thank you, Mr. Jason Watkins. Y'all be blessed today.